All right, so welcome back to the Zach Clark Show. I am very, very happy to have my friend Olivia Arizin with us today, who reached out to me, Olivia, because why? I mean, tell people why you reached out to me to come on today. And
Well, I saw you started your podcast, and I've always been very passionate about student athlete mental health. So I just wanted to tell my story.
so you're comfortable sharing your story, which is first and foremost, kudos to you. And for reaching out, I mean, that's super cool. Olivia and I met classic Jersey Shore. I ran the 10 miler in Seattle, which I do with my family every year. And you and your friend Aaron were kind of like sitting at this bar afterwards. And we were all hanging out. And so we got to talk, and then we'd be like, Instagram friends or Philly sports or whatever. So
Yeah,
a lot of commonality here. You guys summer at the Jersey Shore, is that?
we do. I'm there every weekend.
And big family.
5 people in my family.
Five in your family. All athletes.
Yep.
And I think for me, I've been fascinated by the intersection between mental health and high school athletics, college athletics, even youth athletics. I mean, I know for me, like growing up, I will say now what I'm hearing, some of my friends have kids and they're like not keeping score and they're taking away the whole competitive element of sports, which I feel like is diluting some of the stuff that athletics taught me about winning and losing and how to learn from mistakes and all that stuff. But on the flip side, we were talking about your story before this, and it sounds like when did you start running? When did you know that you were an athlete? Like, let's start there.
So I started running in first grade.
Okay.
Little Olivia. And I was doing cross country and outdoor track. I would experiment
In
with
first grade?
Yeah. Or maybe not outdoor track in first grade. I think that started in fourth grade, but
Yeah.
definitely you can do cross country starting as a kindergartner. And so I started doing that. I would experiment with lacrosse, basketball, other sports. And it wasn't until sixth grade I realized that I was really good at the 800.
Good, fast.
Yeah. Winning everything. And, then I got to high school and it just started taking a whole new level.
Where do you fall in the... So you have two brothers, or is it?
Yes, I'm the oldest.
Oh, you're the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're out in front, you're running, you're realizing you're fast. Your parents are athletes or no?
My dad was an athlete. My mom was a horseback rider.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's all over the place.
Yep.
Competition. And in sixth grade, when you realize that you're good, do you enjoy the sport at that moment, or are you just thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to do this because I know I'm fast?
I think I did enjoy parts of the sport, but I, from a young age, had bad anxiety before races. So I would enjoy the after fact, being on the high from winning. At a young age, I was addicted to chasing that.
Yeah.
But before each race, I would feel sick to my stomach. A lot of athletes do, but I just didn't. It progressively got worse as through high school when there was more pressure.
Yeah. And you grew up, just to jump around a little bit, just so everyone is clear, in PA. Go Birds, Phillies.
Yeah, go Birds.
Okay. And you're in sixth grade, you realize you're good, the 800, and then how did your career kind of take off from there?
So then I went to Cardinal O'Hara, which
Okay.
we were a really good running school.
Private?
Yeah.
Okay.
And after that, I was qualifying for the state championship at a young age, making the finals, and people just were following my career. So it made me, the pressure just built, but it's hard because I did love it at some points, but then I just, again, before, the anxiety for me was just a different level. People get nervous, but mine was just would affect me in school, would start a few days before, and I'm not at the Olympics, it shouldn't be affecting me
Right.
that much at such a young age.
So I'm very curious, because I think the thing about track and field, right? So for me, I played football, basketball, baseball. You don't walk, unless you're elite, but for me, walking into high school as a freshman, I'm not going and playing varsity sports right away.
Yeah.
As a runner, I would assume that that's a possibility. Are you as a freshman running for the varsity?
Yes. So as a freshman running for varsity, making the states, and And then I think it was sophomore year. That was the first time that I won states.
Oh, wow.
So that was when like the pressure really.
State champion.
Yeah.
As a sophomore. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you're a freshman in high school. You show up. What's the first time? So you were getting sick before?
Yeah, that started for me in 6th grade. Like,
no shit.
Yeah, just from a young age, like, would, like, in school notice myself being like, oh my God, I have a track meet in 3 days. Like, I literally can't function on this test. And then it would be, like, the morning of, and I would get sick every single time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a dinosaur, so I was in high school 20-something years ago. For you, this is not like the mental health conversation at this point. It has started a little bit, right? So as a 6th grader, do you think to yourself, maybe this isn't normal, or maybe I should ask for help, or do you tell your mom and dad? I'm very curious about.
I think with being an athlete, you're supposed to be like strong and push through. I always like deep down was like, this is not normal, but I was like, I have to like push through and win. And that mentality started for me at like a very young age.
And that pressure was coming from yourself or from the outside?
From myself. I think, my parents were always very supportive of me. I think a lot of it was myself.
Okay.
And wanting to like be the best and being a perfectionist, honestly.
It's very interesting. So I would assume in 6th grade, like as a girl, right, you're like starting to do your nails and the makeup, but like you're just full on.
I was just full on, like from a young age, very intense. And a lot of it was me putting pressure on myself.
And were you like, in terms of, did you have friends or was it?
Yeah, no, I had friends, but I always would, like my friends at track meets, I would get jealous of them because I'm like, why aren't they nervous like me? You know, like comparing myself, like, did they just throw up a Ford? And like, I didn't know, stuff like that.
Do you remember the first time it happens where you get sick before?
Yeah,
before
in 6th grade.
Take me through that.
At the Archdiocesan Championship, I was supposed to win, and I, was like hiding in the corner throwing up, and I was like, I don't want to do it. But then I had coaches, and people were like, no, you're doing it, and you're fine. And then I won, and then didn't think anything of that not being normal.
So from that moment on, it's like the winning almost validated this.
Yeah, like it was a weird connection. Like if I throw up, then I'll win almost, or like.
It's wild.
A weird connection.
And are your coaches in middle school? I'm very curious about this because I feel like youth coaches and middle school coaches have this ability to really lay a positive framework or foundation for high school, college, pro athletes. But a lot of them probably aren't qualified. So do they ever bring up?
I had the best coach in grade school, Mr. Dolan, Aaron's dad, actually.
Okay.
And he always was like talking me off the ledge. He's like, you're fine. Like, I think it made him upset that like a little girl was so like consumed by just a track race where it's supposed to be fun at that age. Like, I think you go through phases of sports where like that's the stage that's supposed to be the most fun, and then it gets more intense as you go through. But there always should be a level of that fun. But like my anxiety just sucked the fun out from a young age.
And we'll move on to high school, but in middle school, does mental health, like, do you know what that is at that point? No, no idea, right?
No idea.
Like you're just win at all costs.
Yeah. And
so you show up your freshman year. Are you recruited to go?
I don't know if they can do that.
Okay.
But I just knew I wanted to go there because it was like the best track school in the area.
In like Philly?
Yeah, like Delco.
Delco, yeah. Shout out Delco. So you show up at Cardinal Doherty?
O'Hara. Cardinal O'Hara.
Cardinal O'Hara. You show up there and you're immediately one of the best runners in the school. Mm-hmm. It's a spring sport, right?
Well, it would be cross country, indoor, outdoor. So it went from grade school being able to, play other sports, and my whole life wasn't track, to like, then it became real. It was like, wow, you're good. You can go to college for this. And like, you have cross country, indoor, outdoor, 3 seasons.
And is your coach is it the high school coach that is your main running coach, or do you have an outside coach as well?
For the first year, I had my high school coach was my main running coach, and then we had a lot of coaching changes. So then Mr. Dolan, Aaron's dad, became like after school, I would go to 2 practices. I would go to my high school and then practice with him and a group of guys.
I mean, that in itself is insane.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're a freshman and a sophomore in high school and you're having 2 practices. Like it's not necessary.
Yeah. No, I know.
Oh my God. Okay. And then, so at what point do you start to realize that this is maybe like an issue? Because I'm with you, right? Like I've played a lot of sports in my life, and there's always the guy or the girl that I see that just doesn't seem to be bothered by any of it, right? And I'm so jealous because I am a mental midget. Like, you know, as a pitcher, I would start walking people all over the place, and so like the mental health thing was very true in my athletic career. And I'm just curious for you, when do you start to realize that, like, hey, maybe I'm not like these other people? And then when do you kind of put your hand up and say maybe you need some help?
I think honestly all of high school I suffered through it. I was just doing so well. It was like, oh, Olivia's just ran the number 5 time in the country as a sophomore or whatever. And I would
Is that true?
Yeah. But I would have like a big smile on my face after because I was relieved it was done, honestly. And then I just wouldn't deal with it before what just happened before that would affect me like days before, the vomiting every single time. It was especially worse at like state championships and the higher, more elite competitions. But like I would win, so then it wouldn't really become a conversation.
So it's almost like the higher the stakes, the sicker you got.
Yeah.
So when you run this, where was it? I'm going to hone in on this. So that when you were 5th in the country, where was that meet?
In Shippensburg, the state championship for.
So not far from home.
No.
And when does the feeling start? Because I feel like we can sit here and have a very kind of like surface level conversation about getting sick before a race, but I'm very curious for a young woman like you who's operating at the absolute highest level of track and field. You're in Shippensburg, and we're like, is it the night before? Is it the day? Like, can you take me through the actual, from the second you start feeling that way until crossing the finish line?
I think it would start like a few days before. I would just feel, I was like, oh God, this is coming up. Try to be in the moment. Like at that point I had like right online, it's like be where your 2 feet are before a race. So I would constantly like repeat that to myself. And then I think the night before the race, could barely eat, just felt sick. Like everyone would be like laughing, having fun, not thinking about it until like, the warm up. But it started for me the night before, would not sleep at all. And then probably at like 6 a.m. the next morning, wake up and get sick the first time. And it depended, like I would barely be able to eat anything because I felt so sick. So then it's like, how is my body moving at like this crazy fast pace? Like when I'm like, not fueling my body.
But this has nothing to do with disordered eating or...
No, I mean, every day in high school I had a hoagie. Like I had no problems doing that. Yeah. And I also loved beef jerky. I would have that every day too. Because I was trying to gain weight. So I didn't have an eating disorder, luckily. But like, it was more like just feeling so anxious that I couldn't eat.
So 6 a.m. you get sick. Say the race is at 11 to like, when does track usually go off?
Probably the 800 was always at like 2 p.m.
Okay. So from 6 to 2, are you like, where are your coaches? Where are your teammates? Where are the people that are supposed to be?
I would honestly isolate myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And no one would say.
No, they were like, this is the way Liv is. Like, leave her alone. She gets nervous.
Because you were operating at such a high level.
Yeah.
Like, she's fine. She's going to run fast.
She's fine. She's going to run fast. Leave her alone. She doesn't want to talk to anyone.
It's so interesting. And so what was, in terms of getting sick, like, okay, if you're going off at 2 o'clock, is there like 1:30 you're like hiding out somewhere?
Yeah, I think, I'm trying to remember. I would, call my mom always like crying and being like, I don't want to do it. And she's like, you don't have to, but like obviously I was going to do it because I wouldn't want to give up and have that like athlete mentality. But it was just such a build up, like not normal compared to other athletes who are like so excited to like get on the line and like do this. And for me, it was something I just like dreaded.
Did anyone know this was going on?
Again, I think it was just like, she's nervous.
Yeah.
Like she is one on the team that gets extra nervous because she has higher pressure.
Yeah, but that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me that we live in a world where the stock response to someone who's an elite athlete is she's just nervous and she's fine and she's going to go out and run her race. That we're not pulling back another layer of that and saying, what's really going on here?
Yeah. No one ever did that for me.
And so do you ever engage in therapy or?
Yeah. I mean, so when I got to college, luckily Georgetown had a sports psychologist on staff, and my coach at the time, Julie Cully, do you know her? Mm-mm. Okay. She was like, Liv, you should really go and talk to someone. And I was like, no, like I'm fine. Because I always had this like, I'm like too tough. Like I just always had that mentality. And then I finally went to talk to someone and they're like, oh honey, like that's not normal. Like that's not good.
Was there relief?
Yeah. I was like, wow. Like I've finally confronted like, that's not normal, and I could talk about it, and there was relief for sure.
So I want to dial back. So before you get to Georgetown, freshman year, sophomore year, you're running at a high level. When did the offers start coming in? How do you decide to go to Georgetown? Because I think that's another thing that doesn't really get talked about, right? Is you're basically this commodity, and there's 10 or 15 or 20 schools, I assume, coming after you and trying to get you to commit to come run with them. I mean, was there additional stress around that? Was there relief when you finally picked Georgetown? What was that, the kind of recruitment process?
I think the recruitment process started my junior year, but you can't commit anywhere until, I think the rules have changed, but like fall of senior year. So I was looking at Georgetown, Villanova, Oregon, UNC, and Notre Dame.
Oh my God.
I took visits to all of them. I loved all of them, honestly.
Did you go to Oregon?
I did go to Oregon. Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah.
But I really connected with my Georgetown coach. I was like, I knew this is the place I should be, and the area and everything. I just had like that gut feeling. So I think when I committed there was a bit of relief. But then again, I was like, oh my God, I need to keep up to their standards. Like they saw me run this way. I need to get better. And it was a lot of pressure on myself. It wasn't like my coach wanted me to just keep doing what I was doing basically and do well. And she was very supportive. She knew, like, as soon as I got to college, I told her what had been going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. So I'm curious, and feel free to answer this however you want, but in high school, is there any drinking? Are you like experimenting at all? Does that bring any relief, or is it kind of like I have to be?
I was very, very strict. I didn't drink in high school at all.
Okay.
I think like the first time I drank was like, or you know what? I take that back. Freshman year, I was kind of bad.
Okay.
That was before I was like a really good runner. And then the first time I drank after that was my senior week, like when track was done, celebrating. So I think college, that was like the freedom. Yeah, a new thing for me.
Does the booze provide any relief to the anxiety? Like, does it help you like loosen up, or?
I mean, I don't think I would use it for that. I just would do it as like a social to have fun. Yeah. I think relief from anxiety would be like me talking to the therapist about it. Yeah. Or
it probably means you're not an alcoholic. I mean, for me, when I drank, it was like, I was drinking to make this feeling in my soul go away.
Yeah.
Good news for you.
Good.
All right. So you show up at Georgetown, you connect with your coach. It sounds like you made a good decision. Mm-hmm. But now here you are going from the best of the best in high school to showing up, and now you're just one of how many on a team?
Yeah, I mean, probably like 35 girls who are all state champions and all, like I would do workouts, I'd be in the back of the pack. And it was, for me, coming from that pressure, I liked that. I liked being in the back. I was like, oh my God, like I can finally, there's no expectations. Like I obviously have to compete, but I don't have to be like the star. I did not like being that.
You didn't?
No.
But you did it because you felt like
because I was good and I had like, I didn't want to waste talent pretty much. I was like, I'm talented. Like God gave me a gift, so I might as well use it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so wild, man. Just because like, as humans, I feel like we do so many things that don't actually make us happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, yeah, you're good at it, but to what extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting sick before these races. Do you run all 4 years in college?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you show up, and does anyone fresh, because I want to get into kind of like, do you feel supported at college? What's
Mm-hmm.
the issue with college sports? What would you change about the mental health landscape for collegiate athletes? I know for me, you know, we did this college tour a couple years ago where we went out to 5 or 6 colleges, and we talked to all their students and their student athletes. And, you know, I heard a couple things. One, that counseling centers are over, like, getting crushed. And
Right.
so, to your point, if you try to make an appointment, you might be waiting 3 or 4 weeks, when 3 or 4 weeks in the life of a college student is forever.
I mean, I feel like in college when you need help, you need it like then and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go to Georgetown, your coach says, go talk to the psychologist. Let's talk about that.
So I go, luckily Georgetown had a full-time sports psychologist, but only 25 D1 schools have that right now.
Okay.
Which is kind of shocking. So I went to her, and it took a bit to like crack the shell, but then get to the root of like what is making me so anxious before these races. Like, what self-beliefs do I have? Like, I would honestly believe like if I wasn't winning, like my family and people would like stop caring about me.
Was that true?
No.
Okay.
But I had these beliefs in my head, like people will look at me differently. Like I just defined myself so much by the way I performed, not a healthy level.
Yeah.
That I like genuinely believe these things.
It's unbelievable. I hate that you felt that way. You don't anymore,
yeah,
right?
it's sad. No, I don't anymore.
Okay. And freshman year, do they sit you all down and say, hey?
I think I remember that's when like mental health started to come up.
Okay.
Like we would have all the student athletes I don't remember who came to speak to us, but like there was a panel on mental health, and I was like, that's honestly what triggered for me that I like needed to go talk to someone about the anxiety.
Yeah. And so what is your mental health journey in college? Kind of take me through that.
I think so. When I got to college, I was relieved. I liked the pressure being off of me. And I honestly, from freshman year to the middle of junior year, I kind of just like stayed stagnant. Like I didn't have that drive to be the best anymore. I liked being comfortable because that anxiety level, like I didn't want to feel like could I have been the best? Probably, but I didn't want to be getting sick. Like it was just such a like, I don't know how to describe it, but like the better I would get, then the worse the anxiety would be. So I didn't want to be better. And then it wasn't until like my junior year where I felt that drive again. I was like, oh shit, like I want to start winning again. I don't know what switched to me, but like then I started doing well again and having that fire. I would still have the anxiety, but I was like, I guess I'm running out of time in college to like compete. Like I need to, yeah.
And at this point, do your teammates finally know kind of what's going on? Is there anyone else that you're talking to where there's some level of identification where you kind of feel safe because, oh, like this is happening for this person too?
I think I'll never forget. I was at a meet at the University of Florida. I was getting sick before, and this girl from a different team was also getting sick. And like, she came up and gave me a big hug, and she's like, I'm so happy it's not just me. And that to me was like, oh my God, like I've been waiting for that because I didn't, I haven't encountered someone that went through the same sort of anxiety before.
Yeah.
It was always like a little bit of nerves. Like girls would joke, like, I'm so nervous right now. But I was like, no, mine is just like a different level.
Do you know who that is? Like,
no, I don't know who it was.
You don't?
Because we raced a minute later, and then I don't know. But it like helped me in that moment.
Yeah.
And I had like a great race because I was like, wow. Like I just felt like a weight lifted.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone. And so what would you say for college athletes now? So tell me about this paper that you wrote and where the passion came in and how your college journey kind of concludes.
So the paper I wrote was about the transition out of college with mental health and like athletic identity. And it was all about like, what do you do when you're done? Because it's not like a matter of if you're done, it's when, because only like 2% of people go on to be professional athletes. So how do you define yourself after that? And I really enjoyed writing it because I got to interview a lot of my friends and a lot of people that you didn't think were struggling. They were the whole time, but like weren't talking about it. But I finished off, basically, I won the Big East my junior year. That's when I kind of had that fire back in me. And then COVID sent us home. So that was like the ending for me.
That was your career?
I mean, I came back senior year only for outdoor, but at that point I was checked out. I had taken like a lot of time off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say you won the Big East, you won the 800 meters at the Big East Championships, is that? And what is the feeling there? Are you proud, or is it just like this is the expectation? So
I was proud because I think like the anxiety journey the whole way. I was like, wow, I really just overcame that too. Like I could have just settled in college and been like okay with being in the back or whatever, what I was doing before. But I kind of like broke through that and was like, you know what, you're better than this. You can overcome this. And like I had helped so many teammates along the way by like speaking about my experience, and like other girls on my team had similar anxiety issues that they then talked to me about.
Right.
And like what I remember more is not even the winning, it's like who did I help and who helped me.
I love that. Yeah, I had my sister on who she struggled with an eating disorder. She was a runner growing up, not to the level that you were. And she was really nervous to come on and share her story. And then when the episode aired, I mean, hundreds of people wrote in and wrote her and told her how much her story really helped them. And I think that's part of the mental health crisis that we're missing, is that the people that are going to carry the sword and really make an impact, I believe, like it's great, the therapists and the psychologists and the doctors, but it's people like us, like sharing our stories and putting it out there so that, the Olivia Arizin who's a freshman in high school right now, who's getting sick before track meets, listens to this and knows that it's okay to put her hand up and ask for help. Yeah.
And now I want to be that for people, but I wish I had that. Like I would have been like, oh my God, it's not a big deal. I can just go get help.
Have you talked to your coaches? Have you went back? Have you shared any of this with?
Yeah, they always knew that there was not something up, but like the anxiety.
No, but I'm just curious. Like, have you actually like said to them, hey, can I come in and talk to the team, or hey, can you use my story?
No, but I would love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had an amazing coach. I had two amazing coaches at Georgetown. The second coach was Coach Baker, and I'll never forget at the Big East when I did well. Like all I needed was someone to like notice me and give me that little like word of affirmation. And all he said was, "You're the same Olivia before and after." And like that simple sentence for me, like I think that's honestly why I did so well, because I was like, "Oh my God, I am." Like my coach even says that. Like he just had to get me out of my head.
Right.
Yeah.
And where is your family in all of this throughout your
supportive
journey?
Some of the races were far, so they wouldn't come, but I mean they were always supportive and always there for me, and they knew that I had like struggled with this, and they were supportive.
Yeah.
And would try to talk me off like the ledge before and call me and make me feel better.
Yeah. And how does it all tie into your social life?
I think in college, I definitely had more of a social life because I didn't want to put all my, like, everything into running. Even though I did put a lot into it, like, I liked having the outlet of, like, I'm done running. I can go back and hang out with my friends that aren't athletes and not talk about it, Because for me, that gave me relief.
Yeah. And so now being on the other side of it, what we're seeing and what I'm seeing is there's been, some high profile suicides. Katie Meyer, who was the goalie at Stanford, is one that comes up all the time, and her family's really out there kind of leading the charge to try and make for some change. But that's not it. I mean, like, you look at any college campus across America, and sadly, people are taking their own lives.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious for you if those thoughts ever crept in, or if while you were at Georgetown, anybody from the student, like, where's your head at around some of that stuff?
So luckily for me, those thoughts never crept in. It was just like bad anxiety, and I knew, if I didn't run well, I had those other outlets, luckily. But I think at Georgetown, I had a lot of friends who struggled with that.
Yeah.
And which broke my heart. And there obviously needs to be more done. Like, you can't wait. If someone's feeling that way, you can't wait 2 weeks to go into a therapist. Like, you need it today. And I think that has been part of the problem for some of the schools. Either one, people don't think there's help for that, or the wait time to go in and see someone. Because I know the girl from Penn, the therapist that she wanted to see was a 3-week wait, and she needed it then and there. So it's how do we make that happen?
Yeah. No, but I also think this is the conversation that we need to be having, because I think there's a lot of people out there like you who might be struggling, but because they're not having these severe thoughts around suicide or whatever else it might be,
right,
they just convince themselves that they're going to work through it.
Yeah,
kind of like
that's
you did.
what I did. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't as severe as that, but it was pretty bad. And I just was I have to push through. No one was talking about it around me, so I didn't know that it was something that one could be helped. I always thought there was something wrong. I was embarrassed of it.
Right.
But then I kind of in college, having that support, it did get, but there were races where I wouldn't get sick, and I would kind of just lean into okay, I get nervous, and I'm going to go see my sports psychologist, and I would talk about it to people, which made it less of, before it was this big thing in my mind, and talking about it made things better.
Yeah. What is your relationship with running? What is your relationship with running and mental health, and how is that all intertwined? Because I know for me, running is a savior. It's my savior. When I need that relief, I go out and I go for a run, because it really helps me reset. But
so I think the year after college, I didn't run at all during my 5th year. I didn't even exercise.
Okay.
I just didn't. And then as a result, I was didn't like the way I looked, because I wasn't taking good care of myself. But for me, I needed that time off. And now, as time has gone on, I've signed up for half marathons just because I want to, and we'll go for a run every day, and it has a positive impact on my mental health, because it's on my terms.
yeah.
And since I've been doing that, I have felt an itch in me to race again, on my terms. But, I don't know if I'm going to do that, but it has came back a little bit, the passion and missing that.
Yeah. I just think that, one, your story has so much value, because I think it's the reality of a lot of college athletes. And for you to say that everything, the relationships were worth it, but kind of everything outside of that maybe wasn't, is really eye-opening to me. And then we have this whole NIL, and now we're getting into this other craziness, which I assume was not there when you were running. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think
we were talking about that before? But I personally think every athlete should be equal. I think especially for females, it can be a problem, the NIL, because you're working with a lot of brands, and it can make you compare yourself to others. So I don't know enough about it, but I imagine it's not the best thing.
When you say compare, like you're showing up to a start line and you're kind of like looking down the line and you're comparing yourself.
Yeah,
In
or
every
just
way
even
possible.
like if one girl can get a brand deal with, say Vori, one of those brands, and the other one can't, you're like, what's wrong with me? Kind of.
And there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we go back just real quick to, because I think it all ties into the paper you wrote. And for me, and it's like, it's heavy for me to talk about. So me and my dad, and it sounds like you have coaches and people in your life who you were close to. Like for me, my dad was my coach and he was my dad. And so all throughout high school and all throughout college, it was all we ever talked about was baseball.
Right.
Right. And when it became clear that my baseball career was going to be over, like I was not going to play professionally and I was going to enter into the workforce, I felt like I lost two things. One, I lost a friend, like I lost my dad because we really didn't have anything to talk about. Like we had to really recreate that relationship, and that took a toll on my mental health. And then I also lost kind of the competitive spirit and the desire to kind of stay in shape, and I let myself go. Right. And I didn't really, for me, it wasn't until I got sober that I realized how much I let myself go. My story's different than yours, but we have a lot of obviously commonality. So I'm just curious, like you talked about being a woman and in your fifth year and feel like saying you let, like what does that transition look like, going from being a high level college athlete to now being a fifth year senior and just kind of hanging out?
Yeah. So I think I definitely, track was a huge part of my identity for so long. So, and a lot of athletes go through this. You can either like transition really positively and like go right in the workforce and have that competitive edge still, or I think the majority of people really struggle because you do feel like a piece of you is like taken away. And I didn't want to work out. I didn't want to run. I hated running. My roommates were all like still running at the time. They all went to UVA, and some of them ran at Georgetown for us for a fifth year.
Okay.
But like they'd be like, want to go on a run? I'd be like, absolutely not. Like I honestly don't know what I did with that year because I did school and I had fun with like friends and explored DC outside of running. But I definitely, it took a toll on like, oh my God, now I have to think about what I'm eating. Like I never have thought about this because I was always running like 7 or 8 miles a day.
Right.
And so it definitely just was a new ball game for me, thinking of all that stuff.
That's wild. That's so wild. I can't even imagine. I mean, like I just, operating at that level and then just having all the pressure of, it's like that transition is crazy. I mean, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
and
not
that's
like
what
these
I wrote
colleges
about.
chew you up and then spit you out.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was a mixture of feelings because I was happy the pressure was gone. Like a huge weight of anxiety was lifted off of me. But at the same time, then I was like, what now? Like, I've only known myself as Olivia Arizin, the runner, and I know I'm a good friend and I know I'm other things, but like a huge part of that was being a runner.
Right. And what does life look like today? I mean, so I want to do two things. I want to touch on, first of all, your story is incredible. I want to thank you for sharing it because I feel like every young female runner needs to hear this, or young female athlete needs to hear this, because we define ourselves so much by the performance on the field, and we convince ourselves that if we don't perform well, then we are not going to be loved. And that's a really sick way of thinking.
Yeah, and that line alone, like if that's engraved in your head, that's so hard to break out of. Like you have to rewire your brain. And like I would have to say to myself on the line, like, again, what my coach said to me, like I'm still the same Olivia before and after. Like I'm so much more than just a time result. Like just having to repeat that to yourself has definitely helped me in college.
Yeah. So when do you start? I'm going to shift gears to modeling because you told me this story before that's so fucked up, and I just want to like kind of touch on it, and whatever you're willing to share, fine. Whatever you're not willing to share. But so when do you start modeling? When does it shift to kind of wanting to do some of that work? And can you kind of take me through that? Because I think whether it's athletics or modeling, I mean, these are all high pressure kind of situations. So it's fascinating to me that you would go down that road.
So I think I started doing that in high school, like a little bit. I'll never forget, I did like a photo shoot or something in that year that I was off where I wasn't exercising. And they just had like a lot to say about like the way I looked. Like, you look different, but wouldn't say what. And they were like, you just look like you gained a lot of weight. Like, it's fine if you did. But for me, that was so confusing because I'm like already going through the struggling, not being an athlete, like thinking about the way I look. And that made it like exemplified. But, and in such a time where like the modeling industry has been like, oh, let's promote body positivity, like get rid of body shaming, I was just shocked that someone could.
So can I ask questions about modeling? Because I'm curious, right? So it's another area, and I think modeling is probably, and I don't know shit about modeling and what's going on in that industry, but I would imagine that they're probably even behind college athletics in terms of like mental health support and the way they treat people and how success is defined. So I'm just very fascinated. So you go and you take photos and then you get a call and they sign, like what, how do you become a model? I mean, that's the question.
So someone had reached out to me on Instagram and then I submitted photos, and then you go and do like a test shoot. Then they liked me, and they liked me when I, of course, was like running, you know, I was in the peak shape of my life, and a lot has changed throughout the years. So then like this past year, I got an email. It was like, yeah, it was really nice working with you. You look a lot different. Like, we're done with you. And I was like, that's fine by me. I don't want to work with anyone that, like, I look like a normal woman now. Like, I don't look like 100 pounds, like how I used to when I was running that many miles a day. And I'm like so comfortable in my own skin now. Whereas before I was literally like skin and bones, but I didn't have like an eating disorder.
Right.
So I was just like shocked. I'm like, wow, I'm like happy now. So if you don't like that, then I don't like you. I'm good.
I love that. That's incredible. I mean, that just tells me that you've done the work and you've, you know, so much of this is like self-love, right? I mean, and as a guy, I think for us, we people think it's cheesy to talk about loving yourself and being proud of who you are. And I've gotten I mean, I don't give a shit. I'm 40 years old. Like, I am who I am at this point. But for you to know that this early on in your life is super cool. But when you're a model, you show up, is it New York? Is it Philly? Like, where are you going? And then do you have a main contact there? Who sends you this email? I'm just very fascinated by the way you're treated in that environment.
Yeah, you'll get like an email. It'll be an address that you have to go to for a casting. And that the casting's like a tryout pretty much. So you're in a room of like 50 girls. No one's very nice, honestly. And yeah, it's like like you're like competing against each other.
What makes you want to do that?
Well, I just think I'm like a different model, I guess, because I go in those rooms and I'm like talkative and like want to have fun, and I walk out and I get a cheeseburger. Like, I don't give a shit.
I love that.
So, and I do love like athletic wear. Like, if I do model, I would want to be like athletic wear, like bikinis.
Yeah.
That's what I'm passionate about. But
okay, so you're gonna keep doing it?
I think. I don't know. I mean, if someone else says something rude, I don't care. Like, I have a good job. It's not my main source of income. Yeah. So it's not like make or break. Like, I need to do this.
Giving you a couple stats here on what's going on currently with women and college sports, but also seeing what you might change. But what's life today? Like, give us the hope. Like, where do you end up?
So now I'm living in Philadelphia with a roommate. All my family's in Philly.
Amazing.
So I'm very happy to be close to them. I'm working for the World Cup coming to Philadelphia in 2026, and the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. So I'm really excited working on that, kind of like once in a lifetime event. And I'm just really passionate about what I'm doing. And then I think on the side, like, if I can get back involved somehow in track, whether it's, I don't know if I want to like run competitively or if I could just like help out and coach people someday, I would love that, because I feel like I could like translate what I went through and help people. or even younger kids. Like it doesn't matter the age group, I think.
So I expect the hookup in 2026 in Philly when the
I
World
know.
Cup. But aside from that, so if you had the opportunity to, let's go to here first before I
Okay.
ask you that question. I'm just looking at some numbers here. 44% of all women athletes report. So this is a survey that the NCAA did for 23,000 student athletes. So it's a large number. 44% of women athletes report feeling overwhelmed. Is that accurate in your experience?
I think probably more.
And then only 50% reported feeling comfortable seeking support from a licensed mental health provider on campus. Why do you think so? Like, if almost half of these people are feeling overwhelmed, and as a society we are starting to talk about mental health a little bit more, but then only half of those people would actually be willing to go get the help that they need. Like, why do you think we are still stigmatizing going to therapy and getting the help that folks need?
I think it's probably a mixture of things. I think for sure, like the athlete mentality, like some people aren't able to break out of that and go break down their walls and ask for help because of they're scared or they think something's wrong with them or people will judge them. And then I also think I know that coaches and the NCAA are normalizing it, especially after everything that's happened. But I think having the resources, like the fact that only 25 D1 schools have that full-time sports psychologist, like student athletes are more likely to go to what's available to them than go like off campus and pay out of pocket or something like that. And I just think it's such a need. Like these schools probably need more than one psychologist on staff. Because even if you go to CAPS or something, they might not specialize in like athletes or exactly what the sports psychologist is doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, a full-time sports psychologist, even if there was just one Olivia Arizin in the entire athletic, across all the athletic teams, that warrants that position, right? And so to say there's only 25 colleges that do that, that's very sad to me.
It is sad.
It's very sad because I can't imagine how many people are, having this experience that you've had where you're defining who you are by your success on the track, so much so that you are getting sick before races. You're assuming that your family doesn't love you, if you don't perform the way that you think you're supposed to perform. And then at the end of the day, at the end of 4 years or 5 years or whatever it is, you're expected to just transition into the world as if nothing happened, where your physical body is going to change, your mental state is going to change, the structure from your days are going to be removed, you're going to lose a community. I mean, all of these things that are built in, and really the beauty of college athletics too, because there is some positive, I believe that, are taken away from you. I mean, like the fact that there's so little resources it's just mind-bending to me.
Yeah, I think I can't believe I was lucky enough to have like a full-time sports psychologist, but I can't imagine other
So you would say
schools.
Georgetown did a good job.
I think Georgetown did a great job.
That's good. That's good for them. Okay, so if you could tell sixth grade or freshman Olivia a couple things looking back now, what would that be?
Well, first, that everything is going to work out and be okay. And then that, like, you are way more than any time, result, place, any of that. Like that, now I look back and I don't remember the times. I more so remember, like, the memories with all my teammates, which that I don't regret at all. I had an amazing time. And, like, lifelong friends forever, like, built-in sisters. So that I would savor those moments more than worrying about like the result.
Yeah, because I feel like so much of what we talked about today was that feeling before of getting sick. And that's
completely consumed me. Like the before feeling, it wasn't even worth the after feeling if I did well.
of winning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think your story is similar to a lot of college athletes. My hope is that by having these conversations, we're going to continue to move the needle just a little bit. You know, if some people listen to this and identify and relate and reach out to you, that'll be a really good thing. But to your point, I think, you know, we probably need to make some pretty wholesale changes in terms of the level of support that is provided to college athletes, because I think of it two ways. I mean, for me, I'm someone that loves sports. I love competitive sports. I think that competition can be really healthy. And for me, a lot of losing turned me into who I am today, and learning to lose and, you know, getting back on my feet and all the things that you talk about, resilience within athletics. So I wouldn't want us to lose that.
No, I think there's a fine line. Like, I think that competitive, the lessons that I've learned too from, like, you know, struggling through that anxiety and pushing through and still competing, that has like translated over in so many areas of my life. But I think it's taking a step back and being like, I'm not defined by this at all.
Right. Yeah, because then on the flip side of that, right, to your point, most college athletes are going to end up anywhere but an athletic field.
Right. In an office somewhere.
And we, like, even just like leading with that reality at freshman year, like when the athletes come in, like say, hey guys, we are going to try to win. We are going to try and be our best. We are going to try and push the needle in terms of like excellence. But at the end of the day, most of us are going to end up not doing anything having to do with athletics.
And I think the expectation though on my team was that most of us are going pro. So I don't think that was talked about.
No shit.
Yeah. I mean, you come from everyone that's like state champion, and most girls have that dream. And I think for a while I had that dream until I was like, if I actually did that, like for my life, it's for some people, it's not for me.
Were Olympic was Olympic a thing? Like, was that a thing that you thought about?
Always. Yeah.
So you're like the trials are going off right now. Do you know any of these?
I know a lot of them. A lot of them were from Georgetown. I watched them last night, but I think like watching that does make me miss it and does make me have some like regret. I'm like, that could have been me, but then I remind myself, like, you know, maybe physically I could have done it, but mentally I don't think I could have.
Right. No, I mean, that's a huge deal, taking care of yourself. I mean, it's interesting. I watch it too. I'm kind of a track and field nerd. I love it. I've like fallen into that world in some really weird, bizarre way. And, you know, Michael Johnson, who's a sprinter, was a sprinter. I don't know if you know who Michael Johnson is. I know who Michael Johnson is, but he was like big time, you know, growing up when I was growing up, Olympics, the whole deal. He just started a track league called Grand Slam Track, where he's basically raised, I think they're giving away like $12 million a year in prize money. They're going to have these 4 Grand Slam events throughout the year so that track athletes can actually make money doing it, which is another thing. Like, I feel like swimming and track and some of these Olympic sports are the most demanding, and they pay shit.
Yeah, you're not making a lot of money, which is insane.
Right.
Because that has to be your full-time job. Like, you can't be training for the Olympics and working at a 9 to 5.
Right. It's really for the love of the game.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to see you get back at it at some point, selfishly,
Maybe
just
someday.
because I know you. And it's just been really nice to chat with you and go into detail on some of this stuff. I'm sure that people will reach out to you and have additional questions, and it sounds like you're ready to support them. Before we go, what championship of the 4 Philadelphia sports teams do you want the most next?
The Eagles.
Always birds. Okay. All right, so we'll try and run the 10-miler this summer. I'm going to maybe hold you to that in Seattle. And anything else before we go that you think is important for people to hear?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in, and this is a good one. Peace.